Welcome to The Situation Right Now, where we talk about issues that matter to you, the people of Zimbabwe. Now, this week we're going to be discussing the economy, money, people, and power. Now, to help me have this discussion, especially as we go towards 2024, where we're all looking at what is going to be the financial situation in our pockets, in our country, and generally the future of our children. I'm going to be joined by the professor, notoriously sacked from various, from government-related board for his political opinions, but also a well-traveled, well-renowned professor of economics who's been working across Africa to improve the African continent economically. Now, I'll be joined just after this break by Professor Gift Mugabe. So welcome back to The Situation Right Now, and we'll be talking economics, money, people, and power. And in the studio to help me discuss this is Professor Gift Mugabe. Thank you very much and welcome to The Situation Right Now.
Thank you, Dara. Good to see you.
Beautiful. Now let's just start on the controversial part, Professor. You were recently sacked by the Minister of Industry and Commerce. Let's talk about that.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs, and
yes,
International Trade. Yes, yeah. So basically I was just called by the driver that I have your letter. And he delivered the message that I was sacked from the board of Zimtrade. They made reference to some sections in the Zimtrade Charter and the Constitution. And when you read those sections, they make a reference to misconduct. We had no time to say goodbye to each other because when we came in, we welcomed each other. So it was politics, and it is politics. I think when I look at it, it's quite disappointing because who is losing at the end of the day? Elections were set for 23 August. And the president gazetted the dates, and even the candidates were also gazetted. There was no criminal who was competing. Those were Zimbabweans who were cleared to stand for those positions. So when I made a decision and made a public announcement that I vote for Nelson Chamisa, why was I not supposed to vote for him? Why was he on the ballot box? Why is it offensive? So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't make any sense. Because he is a candidate. And the people must then be able to choose in line with the Constitution. So when we make decisions as leaders, let's say government makes those decisions, they must understand one thing, the message they're communicating. Because I don't think what they did can happen in South Africa, where you are the ruling party, the governing party, and a particular individual expressed opinion on the basis of your failure in government from 1980. 43 years in power, producing poverty, to an extent that 49% of the population are living on extreme poverty. The health sector is in graveyard. The education sector is in graveyard. The young people are being destroyed. They are surviving they are now into drugs. The alarming figures we hear about is standing growth. Standing growth when a child is not growing in a normal way, it's around 35%. So what are you talking about when you think about human capital, the future of this country? So when we go and vote, those are the things which we look at. It's not any way that we qualify as political activists, some of us. It's an opinion grounded on the desire to have a government which is responsible to the economic situation. That was the basis in which I made a decision to say it's better to try new government.
Oh.
So if they take it in a criminal way and there's misconduct, and then become, even now you see how toxic it is when you look at social media. Even if you do something good, you see those attacks comes in, you are useless, you are incompetent. I'm not going to be qualified by ZANU PF to be useful, because they are not also useful to this economy. So they are wasting their time, because we are intellectuals and our duty is to speak, and if they were clever, they should listen to our concerns. Then they make decisions which better this country than to pile pressure and fight an individual. I'm speaking on behalf of people in Mzalaban. I'm speaking on behalf of people in Chimani, because personally, I can work anywhere. In any way I don't, as you were saying in your introduction, I work in Africa. It's just I don't say everything which I do because it's none of anyone's business. So we speak because we know that we have the capacity to analyze issues and to share, with the hope that at one point in time, anyone in government should listen.
But how do you serve in a board that you're appointed by a government that you think is useless?
No, but remember, the board is not owned by government alone. Zimtrade is owned by 50% private sector, 50% government. So where do they get the power to say they can have dominance of making a decision? Remember, when we are serving in the board, I'm not serving in the board to serve the ZANU-PF government. I'm helping young people to export. When I was the chairman of the Export Development Committee in the board, I was giving strategic advice and guidance to management on how to promote exports for women. I'm not serving ZANU-PF government. And we had those programs called Next She Exporter for women to export, where women in Bohera who were doing these baskets were exporting to Europe. Where is ZANU-PF here? Right? Young people, the Eagle's Nest, the programs which are advising the management. By the way, I'm a professor of international trade. So if anyone will be naive to think that when I'm in that body, I'm warming the chair. We were giving them real advice beyond just sitting and making decisions, but strategic guidance based on experience. So we were helping poor people, farmers to export. We were talking about, I came with the idea, my contribution to the board, of export clusters. So we have over 30 clusters in these countries. Like when you're in a board, it's a board decision. But there is always an originator of the idea, advising the management. And those clusters, whom are they serving? They are serving people of Zimbabwe across political divide. People are exporting. So when we contribute, but if I was going to be in a think tank of Chitepo, then that's where ZANU-PF heart is beating, not Zimtrade. So, but that's beside the point. The point we want to make, do we want as a country to be so polarized that we can't tolerate views? Because there's no one who has been said we are doing regime change here to say we want to remove the government unconstitutionally. We are simply saying we are going to elections. And those sentiments, I said them when we're going to elections. Because everyone was saying anything you want, because it was the mood. So do you want to come back after elections and say, you said this, and you must go?
But aren't intellectuals supposed to remain neutral and advise whoever is in power without openly declaring who they want to support?
Which book is that? Which book is writing that nonsense to say an intellectual must remain quiet? I hear people saying that. Where is it written? Where are we going to hear a whistle blowing that now you should speak in our politics? So, what is the essence of rights, freedom of expression? So that is, to me, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I believe that every Zimbabwean must have the right to express himself within the confines of the law. This whole notion that you are an intellectual, you must zip your mouth and just write economics, right? Do you know that the economics and politics are two sides of different coin, of the same coin? Two different sides of the same coin. It's the same. Our fundamental challenge in this country is not even economics, it's politics. Because the political economy here is not looking good. All right. So we speak because we analyze these things, we see how they affect economics. So this whole notion that you are an economist, you must stay in economic line, it's not a properly standard rule, to say the least. It's a view of selfish people who want to blackmail you that you've made a mistake. Which mistake? I speak what I believe, and I also believe that is anyone right to listen or not to listen to what I say. Yeah.
So you speak about the economic clusters that were in Zimtrade and assisting young Zimbabweans and women to export. Now, one would say that these economic clusters in Zimtrade and the Zimtrade itself is actually a policy born out of ZANU PF to develop the people in Zimbabwe and to give them advantage. And if you don't then believe in ZANU PF, then you can't believe in these policies.
I don't get it, because you can't say. I think people must not associate Zimtrade with ZANU PF. Zimtrade is a joint venture between private sector, 50% share, and government of Zimbabwe. Now, the policy of government, which every institution which aligns with Zambian government, is the National Development Plan. But when we help young people to export, you can't ZANUize it. The other question that if I was not there, let's say it frankly, devil's advocate, the chances of not having export clusters are close to 100% of not having. So in actual sense, I'm telling you, it's my idea. Because this is something from a person who is technically grounded to know what's supposed to be done by Zimtrade beyond the basic export promotion which they do when they go for trade fairs. So the chances of not having export clusters was zero.
Do you agree?
So if you say, was I a ZANU PF person? But I was a technocrat who was coming with ideas to help young people within the mandate of export promotion of what? Of Zimtrade.
Do you regret openly declaring your support and loyalty, or maybe your support to Nelson Chamisa of the Triple C?
How do you regret doing a good thing? You send your kids to school. Would you regret doing that? I don't regret. I don't owe ZANU PF anything. They don't owe me anything. I am an independent person. And by the way, we are in a global village. My life is bigger out there than here. There's nothing here. This is a small economy, small GDP, with tight liquidity. But when you go out into African countries, you do more work because they are doing more. So when I talk even to my colleagues, the question you're asking is very important, even in academics. They have this mindset that when you don't agree with NPF, which are financial. But that's a misplaced view, because the world is bigger. As long as you are looking inward, it means you have not come to realize how a global village is defined. So I don't know why even people in ZANU PF want to make noise. They never gave me anything. If I was helping government, it's just for free. Even when we were sitting in the board of Zimtrade, people said you are now unemployed. People are so misplaced. A board member is not an employee. The money which I got as sitting fees is not enough per quarter to buy food for my German shepherds, which I've just seen. It's not. So what is there to regret? But what is very important is to associate with the future. The future is always very important. To associate with the light, that is what is very important, than to associate with the darkness. Even darkness might be prevailing. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, darkness is prevailing, and I will not feel bad that I have been rejected by darkness.
You were once a acting chairperson of of Zisco still, and you resigned from that, and now Zimtrade. You bad blood. Is there any bad blood between you and government?
Yes, I say so, because when I was at Zisco, I resigned after I was pushed out by the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtungove, and the then Minister of Industry and Commerce, Dr. Seka Nzenza. You'd receive calls even at 10 p.m. Why are you commenting on economic issues? You are a board member, you are a chairman of Cisco. So I was supposed to zip my mouth. So it was on the conviction that I always believe that it's unconstitutional for me to zip my mouth. And I dialogue with the then Minister of Industry and Commerce that no, this is my right. And you know what I'm saying? It's purely economics. Then I had not even raised any interest to say I'm going to be voting for Chamisa. So the bad blood is there. I'm aware that even in government there were circulars that don't work with Mugano. So those statements were issued. And even when you meet colleagues, I'm just coming out of a workshop, which I will not mention for professional reasons. And I met colleagues from government. They're afraid of greeting you. So even officials are paralyzed that if we are seen talking to you, they will then phone you, there it was hashi. I was with my boss. So that's the Zimbabwe which I've defined. So it tells you that there's no good blood. But I respect their views. If they don't want to work with me, fair and fine. Yeah.
So just recently, you put on your social media on X that you had been appointed as a leading expert for the BRICS nations. Let's talk about that.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have got a cluster on research, which seeks to build knowledge and understanding around the African economy, because South Africa is part of Africa, and also in clear understanding that more countries want to also join the BRICS. So I was appointed as a leading expert to lead in research and publications, and also training young researchers on research. So we are supposed to be publishing books, because the existing books of economics in particular are outdated. They are theoretical. So if you look at one of the books which is published, which is SMEs and Economic Development in Africa, it's a practical book which speaks to the contribution of SMEs in the African economy, and also challenges which SMEs are facing, and what could be the remedies to such challenges.
Professor,
yes.
A lot of Zimbabweans do well, very, very well out of this country. Professor Atam Tambara went to be a professor of robotics. He's also now working out of Zimbabwe rather than in Zimbabwe. We have Strive Masiwa. We have the likes of you rejected, being fired from boards in Zimbabwe, but being appointed by the BRICS. Do you think Zimbabwe does not respect its own professionals?
Yes, to a large extent. That's why you see that if I use my case, the notion out there from ZANU PF government is that you are incompetent, you are useless, and you can even see senior officials in government, like my brother George Charamba. So there's no appreciation of the country's own intellectual. And I think what also have taken more dominance is politics. That if I don't agree with you, you are my enemy. right? And as long as we don't change that narrative, that Zimbabwe has got a different opinion on politics as Zimbabweans, and that is a permanent issue. Those who love ZANU-PF will love ZANU-PF to death. Those who love the alternative, like some of us, will love the alternative to death, because there are certain things which we want, which are in the alternative. So if whichever government is coming into office is quite allergic to that kind of differences, even if there's a professional with God, they don't like it.
Professor, you send your children to good schools. You've got a number of cars, a beautiful house. Why don't you just keep quiet?
Why should I keep quiet? You are just going to Benure and you say behave like a dove. Does it make sense? And what is leadership? We are all leaders in the society. I'm a leader in my own space, and my space is intellectual space. So if I keep quiet, what is the value? What is my value? So I don't think it's fair. I see that the Minister of Finance is putting a budget which is misleading the nation, and the businesses are planning with the wrong budget or with a misleading budget, and I keep quiet. Do you know that I advise over 50 companies? Big companies. So they need to know what's going on.
You could do that quietly when you advise them.
No, I can also advise them for free as a public good. Why should I be quiet in the first place? What is wrong in talking? Because they will still disagree with me if I keep quiet. But if I also speak, they disagree with me. But they are not. But remember, I have a bigger constituency. You can check on my tweet, the views which comes on my tweet. At some point, I hit 200,000. So I have a constituency to talk to. So that's where ZANU-PF get lost. They think if we hammer him, we attack him, we call him all sorts of names, he will see that he's being rejected. By who? Who is rejecting me? Every product has got its market niche. So I'm a product, I have my market niche. So I cannot keep quiet and shortchange my market niche. Simply because some quarters in government don't like what I produce. And I also don't expect to force them to get to consume my product. So I'm serving my market. And I believe, even in the Bible, Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were the wise one. And the Bible says Daniel had a greater understanding of the things of the world. So each season, there should be the Daniels of that season. And we don't do it out of activism, nor out of vendetta, no. Doing it from my conscience that I have a responsibility to contribute to my country by helping people to understand where we are on specific issues of life. When we were going to election, I spoke because people were going to vote. So I wanted those who can listen to my constituents to know that you must vote for Nelson Chamisa because we have given ZANU-PF 43 years and they have produced poverty. It was a fact, and those who heard the message got it. Those who were angry with it, it's life.
Now you're talking about the budget and saying you can't keep quiet when there's business and the people are planning on a wrong budget or a misleading budget. Now, just recently, President Emmerson Mnangagwa acted using the temporal presidential powers and said that the multicurrency regime is going to be around for the next 6 years or so. What was your take on that announcement?
It was a good announcement because the same president had made a very dangerous announcement in Victoria Falls, I think 2 weeks before that presidential order. He had made a statement that he was going to introduce the Zimbabwean dollar very soon, with or with, even if it means it comes with a pain to businesses. And what then it did, it triggered panic. And we noted that banks stopped giving loans. And financial sector is the heart of the economy. If the heart stops pumping, it means you are dying. So it was tragic. So the decision then to quickly correct that was very important. But I'm a bit worried by the subsequent statement by the Minister of Finance, which he then issued when he was presenting his budget review or 2024 budget discussions in Parliament. He then said that we had to issue this statutory instrument through presidential powers. And in his own words, he said, make no mistake, $0 is coming. And he said, quite worrying, that there was confusion. So we wanted the confusion to settle down. These are his words. So what it means in a literal meaning is that this extension to 2030 is a dummy. He would want to take the market by surprise when the dust has settled. So the dangers of accompanying a statutory instrument with statements and messages is that you actually undermine what is written in black and white. And you reaffirm the concerns which were there as still permanent concerns. So when I look at it, and his subsequent statements where he's saying he will issue a budget in Zimbabwean dollar, it worries me. I don't see the statutory instrument going through its lifespan of 6 or 7 years. But one would also want to say, we know that the statutory instrument expires after 6 months. Why are they not amending the Finance Act accordingly to say we are using and exchange controls, whatever legal provision is available, that up to 2030, than putting an instrument which expires. So this remain concerns from an onlooker and an observer. I think that's a worrying trend. When you issue a policy statement or a statutory instrument, keep quiet. Let what is written in black and white remain as a permanent message about the going concern of that subject.
So some have argued that even extending by 6 years is not really a good thing for the economy, because there are certain long-term loans, like for instance housing and stuff like that. There are certain long-term investments, capital. A business can't be borrowing for a loan that needs to be paid back in 6 years. So nothing really changed.
Yeah, that's a factor, but 6 years is better than what is even more worrying for me is the statement by the Minister of Finance. 2030 is some distance. You can always come with an argument to say we need 2 additional years, 3 additional years. I feel there's a good argument to back that view. But my worry is we are introducing our currency. Make no mistake about it, according to the Minister of Finance, very soon. That's where my worry is. So I think those who are analyzing 6 years are missing the point. They must be worried about the Minister of Finance statements. Even if the view that 6 years is not quite long, but at least you can transact. But this statement, anything can happen. It can happen on Thursday, because it's only him who knows when he can introduce it.
And former Finance Minister Tendai Biti was talking about this punch-out of government, to use temporal presidential powers.
Yeah.
And he argued that Parliament is the one that has the role and responsibility to do that and should not have its powers usurped by President. Do you think that this concern is legitimate, especially for business?
It is, because one, it takes away the constitutionalism. presidential powers must be used when there's an emergence, like there's a cyclone and it's life-threatening, and you don't want to waste time in consulting and delaying processes. And you then empower your president because he's the first citizen, and then he does that. But when you know that you are going to be extending the life cycle of a currency, is it emergent? When you want to enact a fund from Sovereign Wealth Fund to Mutapa Fund, does it need presidential powers? And when you look at how many statutory instruments has been made or declaration made using presidential powers, close to 15 or so in the last 2 or so months. So the message which goes out now, where our government fails to see, is beyond us analysts. It goes into how the global village looks at us. Is there a rule of law? Where there's excessive power in one office and the people are not governing through parliament. There is no certainty about my investment and property rights in that country. And the result, you see it through investments. That the share of investments which we get in this country as a share of GDP is 1.1%. Forget about Zida's fake figures of $3.2 billion. All right? Because when you then ask about jobs, they don't produce the jobs. You know what fascinated me? I saw in your newspaper, Newsday. Was it on Friday? Yes, Friday. You have a story where you were saying United Refineries is producing below 50% capacity due to lack of foreign direct investment. And you know the amazing thing? Who happened to be the chairman of Zida is my brother Busisa, who is reporting $3.2 billion of investments, US dollars. But he's complaining that his company is not getting foreign direct investment. Then you wonder what's going on in Jerusalem. Because if we're getting $3.2 billion, it should filter even to his company. So we are not getting investments because of the environment which we are. And one of those things, the excessive use of presidential powers, they chase away investment.
You made mention of one exciting thing, the Mutapa Fund. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about this?
My concern is quite multifaceted. The first one is that knowing a sovereign wealth fund, the way it is defined, is a fund which is accruing, building savings from surpluses, from minerals, exports, where you have trade surplus. That surplus, like China, they build their fund using trade surplus. So where if a commodity boom, instead of being wasteful, you save and you put that money in a fund. Or you can save on royalties and other incomes from minerals like Norwegian fund. Now, our fund has changed the format. Even budget surpluses, you can also put money in there. Now it has gone into take our state-owned enterprises to be part of the assets of the fund. And when you look at these state-owned enterprises, in as much as they aren't performing very well, they are very big. Very big. For example, if you look at ZESA, it's very big that is in the fund, and no transparency in terms of procurement. They don't have to follow the procurement process. So you get worried to say what's going on in this country. And why are they putting 20 state-owned enterprises? Some of them quite limping. So how are you going to do the reforms? By the way, I don't know whether the government has thought a process on this. If you look at the condition for debt resolution, there are three conditions which were given by the President of African Development Bank. The first one is rule of law, constitutionalism, free and fair election, and implementation of Multicurrency Commission of Inquiries is one condition. And that one, we failed it when you look at the verdict of SADC, African Union, European Union. The second condition, it's the one of paying the $3.5 billion land compensation for the farmers. The third one now is the reforms of state-owned enterprises. And removal of command economics, command, and the implementation of IMF staff monitoring programs. So, if you put 20 state-owned enterprises into Mutapa Fund, so you automatically you've killed the impetus of reforming the state-owned enterprise, because if they can be reformed through privatization, through joint ventures, commercialization. How are you going to do these reforms and pass the test that you are now building a strong economy, which has got capacity to service itself, and then we should take away the debt? So already, again, we are kind of making it difficult for ourselves to pass the test on state-owned enterprises reforms by lumping them in there. Now, the most dangerous part is that, again, it was through presidential powers. It was supposed to go through parliament. And now it violates governance issues. That if you look at Botswana, let's not go far, the Plunder Fund. The board is appointed by the Minister of Finance, and the CEO appointed by the board. In our instance, the board, the chief investment officer, and the CEO is appointed by the president. In Botswana, the Plunder Fund, with over $4 billion, by the way, they produce a report, annual report, which goes to the Minister of Finance, and he takes it to Parliament. They are audited every year, and the Minister of Finance takes the audit report to Parliament. Are you with me? In our instance, they're supposed to produce a report to the president. So who is going to question the president? So automatically, we have actually committed suicide economically, because we are making decisions which are taking away any transparency. So when it looks at governance issues, which are critical matters which should attract investments, we are failing big time. So the challenge for us now is that as long as we don't recognize that we are in a global village, where we should abide by ethos and values of the global village, we always miss the point. And we always argue it's not a competition of those who can defend the Mutapa Fund and those who can then go against it. But all of us, we are losing, because the investors, they don't argue with us. They look at your governance system, they make a choice without our involvement, and you then see the report of World Investment Report by United Nations Conference for Trade and Development every year, reporting that Mozambique is getting several billions, Zambia billions, South Africa billions, Zimbabwe, you are getting nothing, unless if ZIDA also gives you exciting figures which you cannot prove when you go on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Now you were talking about housing. I mean, the presidential powers housed the Mutapa Fund in his office. Mm-hmm. ZIDA, which is also the investment arm, is housed in his office, and yet Mutapa Fund is an investment fund, and ZIDA is an investment driving portfolio. Are there any issues around this relationship here?
The challenge now is capacity issues, to say the office of the president, as I know it, defined by its mandate, like in any office, its job should be policy coordination and monitoring and evaluation. So they should provide oversight and enforce, because they are the powerful office. So now, they now become a player. So they are going to be shamboking themselves to implement certain mandates in a particular organization which they are establishing. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's much easier to allow ZIDA to be under Minister of Finance, because it's now Minister of Finance and Investment Promotion. And ZIDA also oversees the Mutapa Fund. because then you are decentralizing, you are delegating, and you then it's easy to provide oversight and guidance and to monitor and evaluate. Now, the office of the president, I don't think they have the personnel unless if they are going to be recruiting to oversee that. But also to say, this issue of investment, it's like a product which need particular PR and etiquette, where you don't want to be too much closer to the fire, to the center of power. You want to be more softer and having a place which is quite free. The office of the president is not an office to play with. It's a big office. You can't joke in there. But so there's nothing cosmetic in there.
Are they not joking in there?
Did you see them, those judges joking? They don't joke, those guys. But by any nature, it's a serious office. That's what I see it. And even when you get in there, the environment, not because of our government, but in any country, there is an environment which shapes the office that this is the center of power. But so you can't then get relaxed or yeah, it's not easy. It works very well if the ZIDA, if imagine the mood which you get when you get into ZIDA as an investor or as a private company, private business person, and the mood which you get when you go to office of the is different. So it also impedes in its own way. Your questioning is constrained because you are kind of challenging the power. There's too much protocol in your head as you are thinking. So there's no flexibility. So if I am choosing between which country am I going, Zambia and Zimbabwe. In Zambia, the Zambia development agents handles investments. I'm more relaxed in there. Those are things which you might look at. But the bigger issue, the bigger elephant in the room is implementation. I think there is a quite good record when the government was doing ease of doing businesses. They fizzled out. No one blew out a whistle to say stop it. We would get feedback that they're fizzling out. And remember, the office of the president deals with many matters across the spectrum of this economy. So this is a big elephant they need to chew. So are they going to leave other things like security issues, engagement, diplomacy, to put all the energy in this big elephant called investment drive? So those are things one might want to look at and say, is it a wise decision? Or they might want to rethink putting it back to where it belongs.
Now I know you're not a prophet, but I just want us to look at where our economy is going. We are going into 2024. Mm-hmm. Is it going to be better than 2023? Mm-hmm. Are we likely to see the stability on the local currency continue?
Well, I am not a prophet, but I can prophesy. I can prophesy that 2024 will be a very difficult year in our history for a number of factors. The first one, it's external factors, which are beyond our control, at two levels. World economy is showing that the demand for commodities, global commodities, minerals, is going down. I'm hearing figures of 40%. Right, so we depend on commodities. 92% of our exports are commodity driven. 70% minerals and 22% agriculture related, mainly tobacco rather, because we export almost $1 billion of tobacco, $80 million cotton, and about 30 million or so horticultural. So you expect a sudden fall in foreign currency receipts on the back of decrease in prices in global markets. And that cuts on liquidity. And we should also expect aggregate demand. Remember, we are now a dollarized economy. We need more liquidity. We need more exports. That is a real challenge which we are facing next year. That's first external shock. The second external shock is drought. The issue of drought is not a possibility, it's a reality. Unfortunately, we have not built enough resilience and shock absorbers. at two levels, we should supposed to be having, say, 3 or 4 month import cover of foreign currency central bank to deal with the dip in foreign currency. We don't have that. We have less than a month foreign currency cover. In terms of food, we don't have enough grain reserve in our silos. So again, we are starting straight from importing. And we're importing at a time where Russia-Ukraine war has seen commodity prices, food in particular, going up as high as 50%. So I've done analysis that in every year where we have a drought, we spend about 500 million US dollars on average every year importing cereals. So if I take into account that the food prices have gone up by 50%, I won't be surprised in 2024 that we will spend $750 million, because that's plus 50% our traditional import bill. Now, you see the tragedy. On one end, we might lose 2 billion US dollars in terms of foreign currency receipts from exports because of the decline in commodities. On another end, we are draining at least $750 million on cereals, before I include other things like vegetables, which you spend about $200 million a year. And by virtue of having a drought, it means water levels, the dams also be affected. So this is giving clear indication that the next year will be a bad year. Now the drought comes with it drop in water levels in Kariba. So you expect again power outages to be at the worst level next year in 2020, 2024. Now let me talk about politics. The political environment plays a critical factor in terms of inflow of liquidity in this country. Our businesses, they get offshore lines of credits in various forms. For example, you get commodities on a credit to sell in Zimbabwe, from South Africa in particular. So when you have a political environment which is quite toxic, the terms are changed. And I know a number of companies whose terms have been changed or even scrapped. So you have to put cash up front. So you then see slowing down in the availability of foreign currency. That's why when you hear people in the streets, they will say, Mare haisikutenderera. Because there's tight liquidity and they cannot push sales. Right? Those are the challenges. So how is the currency going to perform? Naturally, as you are asking, the currency performs better when we have better inflows of foreign currency. So our local currency will perform badly next year because naturally there will be high demand for foreign currency. The supply will be also subdued. So it's not looking good 2024. And in my view, as long as our government don't take these external shocks I'm talking about, and by the way, I'm saying we do not have buffer, whether in foreign currency or in grains, to respond to these shocks. The only thing which you can do is to have discipline in terms of how we are using our foreign currency. But how do we have discipline when we have command agriculture, where you are giving subsidies and you are having command exchange rate, you are having command roads, and when you pay, that money goes on the black market. When you have a command exchange rate, a controlled exchange rate, you are creating rooms for casino economy where people are getting foreign currency at a cheaper rate and they go on the black market. So those things are dangerous. That kind of policy matrix in a situation where we have risks of this nature.
Amazing. But just recently, the figures that were being thrown around that our GDP has grown by. Is there any statistics or any traceable references to collaborate this?
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you very much. That's quite an interesting question, which I also had worries about. So the official authority in any country about a country's GDP, it's the statistical agents, which is in our case Zimstat. And Zimstat is well capacitated in terms of technical support to collect data. If you follow, they have support from the United Nations and the various development agents, well equipped. And just recently, they did a census last year. And in any census, I remember I was even seeing provincial GDPs, which were being published. So they estimated these GDPs. And when you talk of provincial GDPs, you are not only looking at formal GDPs, you're also looking at informal, because you are doing a census. You're counting everything. And our GDP in Zim dollars is around $120 trillion. If you divide by 6,000, it's $20 billion. That's our GDP. Now, we have two schools of thought which are misleading the country. The first one is the world economics. We just wake up overnight and say our GDP is $66 billion. And you see state media celebrating. You celebrate what you don't know. It's like you are being told you are now a millionaire and they are busy celebrating, but in your pocket of poverty. So I don't understand some of our narrative which want to push, that they want to be happy by lying to ourselves. Our authority, Zimstats, which I have high respect in terms of their work, and knowing that they have that capacity, they tell us it's $20 billion. The second school of thought are our ministries. Through our ministers who present very exciting stuff, like Ministry of Mines. This year, we were told that we are hitting $12 billion economy. And Ministry of Agriculture, they said they already exceeded $8.5 billion economy. Now look at the fun part of it. If you add $8 billion plus $12 billion, $8.5 billion plus $12 billion is $20.5 billion. Those two ministries, two sectors, agriculture and mining, has exceeded our official GDP. Now, I want to give you a qualifying figure to show we're talking about the validation that all these schools of thought they are not correct. Zimstats recently produced quarter GDPs in October, and the share of the mining sector to the size of the economy is 14%. Are you with me? So, if the share of the mining sector is 14%, and if you take an inverse relationship of 14% and $12 billion, we should have a $100 billion economy. Around 98, 99 billion for us to be able to say, because 14% of about 98 billion, that will give you about 12 billion. Are you with me? So already you see that the 12 billion is a lie. So if we say it's 14%, the size of the mining sector right now is 2.8 billion. But it's 14% of 20 billion. So agriculture is about 12%. So again, it can't be $8.5 billion. If you look at Zimstats figures, the services sector constitute 60% of the economy. Your education, health, legal, professional, transport and logistics, tourism. There are 15 service sub-sectors. They constitute 60%. So I go back to Zimstats and say, this is the correct. And Zimstats, to qualify to you that Zimstats, when they know that this thing is going offside, they stop producing the figures. They don't lie. 2008, in July, inflation was last reported by Zimstats at 231 million %. They stopped producing inflation because their system is not cooked. It's international best practice. Johns Hopkins University continued estimating inflation up to December. There was no Zimstats. They were out of the race. And it went up to 89.7, 60 trillion %. In 2019, July, the Minister of Finance made a decision to stop estimating inflation, if you remember. Because Zimstats cannot lie. Their system It's international best practice because they were supported by this international organization to produce something which is comparable with other countries. Now this year, what have they done? They have said we are now using blended what? Inflation. They moved from blended to geometric inflation, where you are now using equations to cook inflation. Because if Zimstats estimate the Zim dollar inflation, in this whole picture, Zimstats would know the Zim dollar inflation that is around 800,000. Because you cannot blend something which you don't have. So they have a Zim dollar inflation, they have a US dollar inflation. So Zimstats is giving, that's where the correct figures are. What the government need to see that these ministries are lying, and they're going to prove to that. And the one easiest way, I wish if you could interview one of those ministries to tell you how many jobs they have created. They can't give you a number because there's nothing taking place which is quite spectacular in those ministries. It's just political grandstanding and trying to put a lipstick on a frog to make it a beauty queen.
Amazing. Professor, let us also just look at what can Zimbabwe do to improve this gloomy picture that you're talking about in closing. What is it? What can be done to get us on a better foot?
So in 2009 to 2013, there was a government of rotational unity, and our highest growth rate was almost 20%. I think in 2012. Average growth rate in 5 years was 10.7%. I'm not advocating for a GNU whatsoever. But I just want to tell you that when you have a stable political environment, the economic works. There's confidence from every quarter of the globe. And even Zimbabweans will be so renewed to work for their country. So building on this observation, I would want to argue that government of the day must always strive to unite the people. Must always strive to respect the constitution, rule of law, and must desist from toxic political environment. ZANU-PF must not make a mistake, which they keep on making, of thinking that Zimbabweans are ZANU-PF. Zimbabweans have different political orientation. There's a good share which supports ZANU-PF. That is a fact. But there's also equally a very good share which supports Triple C. And
which Triple C? Chabangu's Triple C?
No, there's one Triple C. I want to focus on the real one which went to election, which is qualified by SEC, even if the results are challenged. But when you see disputed elections where Nelson Chamisa is in the 2 million of votes, of people who were representing the majority, because it's not everyone who voted, it's a big message on how we are oriented. And you cannot disorient that by attacks, by any machination, abductions, or any evil way of doing things. Because it's in the heart. You cannot marry a girl by beating the girl. You have to sell a good story. So ZANU-PF must know that they need, if they are today the governing party, you can't run the country alone. Yes, they can kick us out, we can leave, but that's not the solution. Zimbabwe will continue to stay behind. And if you check when we began our politics, on 14 November 1997, when we began printing money to pay the war veterans, the Black Friday, we're now 26 years down the line. The political challenge remains the same. So I would not want to talk about economics, because economics is like a seed which you have to sow for it to germinate and give you good harvest. So if you are sowing the seed in a desert caused by politics, it cannot germinate. It can't yield anything. So we should deal with the politics. This whole drama of Chabangu, which you are talking about, where we go to elections with a view to put attention away from the disputed elections. Zimbabweans are smarter. This is 1965 strategy. We're in the modern world. We know what we want. We focus the eyes on the ball. The ball is that we need a properly run election, elections which give results which are not disputed. We don't have guns, but we have brains. So we make decisions which suit ourselves. Each individual is a rational economic agent. With an economy which is 80% informal, you run the risk of moving without everyone on the board. If you want us to put money in the bank, because that's where the money is in the formal sector, we should trust you. So you can hold your guns, you can hold your powerful office, your powerful English when they attack us on Twitter. But the people, when they look at that, they make a decision which suit themselves. They don't make sacrificial decisions to say, let's put money in the bank to build reserves against shocks. We must be a saving country. So they will make a decision to put money under the mattress. And this happened. It's not taking us anywhere. So the government, the president of this country, President Mnangagwa, must take a responsibility of uniting Zimbabweans. And the choice is theirs, because we are just speaking from what we desire as a people. And I don't see where I sit us making any headway, particularly next year, where without a political settlement. I don't see us going anywhere.
Thank you very much, Professor Gift Mugan, for sharing the insights on the economy on this, the situation right now. With me, your host as usual, Dara B. Now we'll continue to ask the questions that matter, and we'll continue to bring to you the issues that you need to know so that you can make meaningful and decisions that are meaningful and that can take us forward as a people, as Zimbabweans. We are citizens, and we need to be seen to be putting our hands on the deck together as Zimbabweans in a country where there's tolerance, where there's peace, and where there's love, and where we respect our own intellectuals and allow them to do the work that they know best without politicizing it. Now, this is me, your host as usual, Dara B, on this, the situation right now on HSTV. Thank you for watching us, and please don't forget to like and subscribe so that we continue to bring you the best interviews and the best programming in this country. Until next time, ciao. Thank you, Prof.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.